welcome to another episode of Pretty Brilliant. If you're new to me, my name is Brittany Nicole. I'm a neurolinguistics expert, and on this channel, we talk about reprogramming your mind to level up your life. First of all, if you're not already following me on TikTok, I recommend you doing it because a lot of what's inspiring my videos lately are questions, comments, and concerns that are showing up in my comment sections, and this video is an example of that. I made a video on TikTok recently explaining a framework that I created. I call it the spectrum of contact. And this was specifically for that weird place. Like when you are starting to become more self-aware, you're on your healing journey, and then you take a step back and you look at the people in your life and you're like, I don't like you. I don't trust you. I can't believe that we were friends. You're becoming more aware, your perception changes. And then when you look around at your life and your relationships, you're like, I don't know how to be in relationship with these people that don't look the same to me. It's an awkward place. If you can relate to that, I'm going to recommend you watch that video. I will include a link to the TikTok video in the description box below. This is not covering that framework. This is covering the foundation of that framework. We need to get a baseline understanding first of what emotions even are. Let's get into it. Emotion is actually really hard to define in a way that encompasses everything that an emotion is. This is probably why, as a society, we are collectively not great at understanding our emotions or expressing them. Emotions are fundamental human data. You can give emotion, you can receive emotion. It can tell you about yourself, or it can tell you about other people. It can be conveyed through music, through art, through movies. There's a lot to it. For that reason, emotions can feel abstract, hard to access, or uncontrollable. But you can absolutely control your emotions. Look at actors, for example. Their entire job is engineering their real emotions to portray a story that may not be real. I define emotional control as the skill of expressing and/or experiencing an emotion on command. Expressing emotion is energy out. This looks like yelling during an argument, laughing at a joke, crying, or flirting with your crush. All of those is your emotion going outward. Experiencing an emotion is when the energy comes inward and you're feeling the emotion with your body. This can look like having chest pain when you feel anxious, being turned on, feeling heaviness and weighed down when depressed, or that open, joyful feeling you get when you're on vacation. Now let's give this conversation some context. I'm going to read an excerpt from my book, Go Love Yourself, which is part memoir and part power play book. In the book, I'm talking about everything I learned about gaslighting, manipulation, and power plays from the perspective of both my professional expertise and my personal experience with abuse and manipulation. And emotional control is a huge theme here. So I want to read you one of the stories, which is an example of me demonstrating emotional control, both control over how I'm expressing my emotion and control of how I am experiencing emotion in a very tense scenario. This story is called The Night. The night was still, but inside me a storm brewed. I sat on the couch, sipping wine, the taste mingling with the metallic notes of anxiety rising in the back of my throat. The TV taunted me with scenes of distant lands where peace felt possible. I heard his car pull up, his aura tainting the 37 minutes of calm I had just carved out for myself. Insignificant argument ensues. I felt the familiar pull, the instinct to engage, to defend, but then something in me whispered, "Don't." I rose from the couch, and my feet moved me toward the stairs. Slowly at first, but hastily once I realized I am being hotly pursued. My instinct is to run, but I partially stop myself for fear of overreacting. I slammed the door closed, His anger pounds against the wood, shaking the walls with accusations that made my blood run cold. I could feel his words trying to reach me, trying to blame me for his mania. But it's too late. I've found myself. I don't believe him anymore. His words have nowhere to land. In the quiet of that room, I felt the fear like a living thing. It was hot, then cold, an uninvited entity moving through me in waves, relentless and purifying. My mind was stripped bare. Every thought boiled down to one simple truth: survive. There was no space for anything else. The world had shrunk to the size of that room. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I typed out messages to the ones I trusted, to the ones who needed to know. I didn't say much, just enough to mark this moment, to leave a trace in case I disappeared into the night. The hours stretched long, each one filled with the sound of my own breath, the beat of my heart, the rustle of the sheets as I checked again and again to see if the barricades still held. This was no way to live. The terror had stripped everything away, leaving only the core of what I knew. I had to get out. Now let's look closer at my behaviors in this story. So I talk about I'm sitting in the living room, minding my own business. He comes home and begins to argue with me over something insignificant. Now, the previous version of myself before I got to this point in my life, I would take the bait. I would engage in those kinds of arguments even though they weren't going anywhere, because I didn't realize that his intention was actually just to get a rise out of my emotion. The argument was a decoy. What he wanted to do was prove that he had control, that he would be able to evoke a reaction out of me depending on whatever he was feeling at the moment. And at this point in this story, I realized that if I engaged, I was giving him exactly what he wanted. So rather than engaging in the argument, I restrained myself and removed myself from the situation. The other behavior that I want to point out is the act of contacting friends and family to let them know what was going on. Now, that was strategic and logical despite the fact that my body was filled with fear, adrenaline, and cortisol, and it's really hard to think when your fight or flight is going like that. So I bring up these two situations specifically because ultimately the ability to have emotional control is to be able to simultaneously experience your emotions and make decisions about what you're going to do with them. Emotional control is also realizing that you have to give people the power to provoke your emotions. People can influence your emotions, they can affect your emotions, but your body, your nervous system is the machine that actually makes it happen. So you are always in the driver's seat. If something someone says, does, or expects of you makes you feel something, that is because you already have an internal agreement with them that their perspective matters, that their opinion matters. If you truly want to finally live an authentic life and be able to express yourself freely and feel like life is unlocked for you, if you truly want to stop feeling controlled by other people's opinions and other people's perspectives, you know what you have to do? You have to become uninvested in their perspective. You have to become uninvested in their opinion. Other people's opinions of you have to become less valuable to you than your opinion of yourself. I hate to break it to you, babe, but people have the right to think whatever they want to think about you, and they get to be wrong. And you actually need to just get over it. Like, let them have their opinions and start to truly get to know yourself. Have a relationship with yourself like you are both your own parent and your own child. That is when your perspective and your opinion becomes number one, and everybody else's opinion is just nice to have or noise. Emotional control is really about freedom. freedom to express yourself as you truly are, and freedom to not be controlled by other people's pressure that they put on you. And it might not sound like it right now, but I'm telling you, you will feel a lot more free when you learn how to be unwanted. When you learn how to accept that in certain relationships and in certain spaces, your wholeness is not going to be wanted. When you learn how to accept that some people are going to reject you, and that's not an invitation for you to change yourself, modify yourself, or prove yourself to them. This is why I wrote the book, Go Love Yourself, because I realized that at the end of the day, I had to be the person who had my own back. I had to develop a relationship with myself where I learned what my needs were, where I learned what my boundaries were, where I figured out what my personality was. And it was a process. And it's a process of, it's almost like dating. Like, give yourself permission to be a grown-ass adult and not know who you are. It's fine. Most of us don't. Most of us are figuring it out. And it's because a lot of us were not raised and brought up in environments that allowed us to express ourselves freely from the first place. So we're figuring it out. And honestly, it doesn't matter how old you are. It is very, very much okay to be figuring it out. And you can tell them I said so. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. I'm off my soapbox. That's all I have for this episode of Pretty Brilliant. I am going to include one, a link to the TikTok that I was mentioning earlier, two, a link to an excerpt from chapter 1 of my book, Go Love Yourself, if you want to check it out, and three, a link so you can actually buy Go Love Yourself on Amazon if you'd like to get a whole copy of the book. Thank you so much for listening and watching to this episode, and I will see you next time.